All right. It is good to be back with you all this week. And hopefully you've had a good week and enjoyed the holiday over the weekend. We'll go ahead and start. We have another new intern with us today. And so I'd like to welcome Sion and ask her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sion. I'm originally from Cambodia, and I'm currently a BYU student. I'm studying public administration. I'm in my first year, and I'm excited to be here doing this internship and get to work with you all.
This is day 2. All right, thank you very much.
Well, she came back. That's always impressive.
Second day is always tough.
So the third item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. And now I will note that there was a revised set of minutes that went out late. And so I don't know if anybody had a chance to review those. If not, I'm going to propose that we hold off on approving the minutes until people have a chance to actually review that change that was made in the revised minutes. All right. So moving right ahead, Matt, we've got you up for some conversation.
Excellent. I promise it won't be as long as last week, so. Here are the revised proposed standards and criteria that we discussed, incorporating the changes from last week's meeting. Thank you again for all the comments. I think that one thing that's going to be addressed at this meeting, and do I need to bring the microphone up here, or will it?
It's healing.
Be okay.
Especially if you stand by Joey, because you'll be right underneath a microphone.
Great, we'll do that. And so we just go to the next slide, next 2 slides, actually. Today's discussion is just going to be a follow-up from last week's on the criteria and standards. They've now been incorporated to address the changes that the commission suggested last week. Hopefully, if everything looks well, we'd be then in a position to circulate these and post them to the website to allow for public notice and comment over the coming weeks. I also wanted to have a brief contiguity analysis and discussion based on some of the questions we had last week. So going to the next slide, as we discussed, we have the 5 threshold criteria, and this is what the commission must comply with pursuant to 302 subsection 4. And on the next slide, we see here those 5 principles that we discussed. Obviously, the legislative redistricting principles. What we're going to propose is going to align with anything that legislative committee adopts. The population deviation, federal state law, single member districts and contiguity, and reasonable impact.
Is
Yes,
that
sir.
on any one of these pages? So if I turn to page 3 or page 6, can I follow it?
Well, what's been provided is more the full, and this is just a brief overview of what we've done. And because there weren't any substantive changes that were proposed, we're not going to necessarily go through those today, but just wanted to give you yet just another reminder of those elements. Insofar as you have any questions, of course, about some of these that we've discussed or any additional changes, now would be obviously a great time to raise those, and I'm happy to discuss anything regardless of whether or not it's on the PowerPoint. But as far as then the 6 additional redistricting standards, so we've broken them up, you'll remember, in the 5 threshold. These are things that are required under the federal constitution and section 2 of the VRA. And then we have the 6 additional criteria under the Redistricting Act that this commission is tasked to define and apply. And so these 6 considerations on the next slide, again, we're becoming very familiar with these: the communities of interest, the geographic boundaries, the cores of prior districts, municipalities and counties, boundary agreement, and purposeful or undue favoring. And it was within these 6 criteria that we had some of the suggestions and comment to make certain revisions. So what I've done in the next 3 slides is just shown what those changes are from what we discussed last week. And I think that the first change here is to remove from our communities of interest definition any qualification of incumbent or political candidates. And I think Commissioner Durham raised a very good point of including certain, suggested that there's particular political candidates that were at issue. And we also, in looking back at that, felt like particular fell into that category as well. So we thought it would be best just to remove those, which I think makes it more clear. Does that address your concern, Commissioner Durham, on that? The next standard change was what I believe Commissioner Baker has raised with concerns on census tracts and the challenges that provides and inconsistencies. We felt that that the easiest thing to do would just be to remove that reference. Not saying that they couldn't be used, but as you can see, it's basically talking about the man-made features, including streets and freeways. It was really not something that had to be, but just more a definition of what those man-made features that the commission may want to use. And so removing that will hopefully, not bind the commission to adhere or look to any census tracts or create any of the problems that Commissioner Baker has identified. The next change that was discussed was just, this is more technical, going from empirical to quantitative, which we think says, it describes the type of measurements that this commission is hoping to employ, and to the extent practicable, will be able to employ. And then those were all the changes. And so I know that one point of discussion today may be our email access. And we discussed last week the importance of trying to conduct all business with these new government emails. I sent an email out, and I understand to these new email addresses that had these revisions last week, recognizing with the holiday I may not get a response, but then when I think there's an issue that on accessing those emails. And so we're going to work on that today to make sure that going forward, all of our commission business can be conducted using this email address, which is going to be really just benefit everybody. Certainly kind of worst case scenario, if there's a subpoena or any litigation that they have to come and gather those documents, that they're all in a central location. They don't intermingle personal or your other work business. And so hopefully today we can get that resolved, and going forward, that's how I'll be communicating, and really encourage us all to communicate any commission business using that email address. So I pushed back the proposed dates that we discussed last week, recognizing we didn't get it on the website or won't, at least until probably tomorrow. And so it was my understanding that the commission was wanting to get that circulated and posted for public comment. And assuming then that these changes fit well and the commission feels good about where we are, it seems that we would be in a position to then circulate this tomorrow to certain interest groups that have done this before, who could provide comment, but also at a minimum put it on our own website and invite public comment on these, and provide approximately 3 weeks until Friday, August 20th for those comments, and then give ourselves until another 10 days, 11 days until September 1st to finalize. We can obviously finalize that prior to that date, but to just make sure that we have sufficient time for the commission to review those comments and make a final determination and issue those. And that will be around the time too that the data will actually become accessible. So it'll be nice. We obviously know that we're getting the legacy file on the 16th, but it will take a couple weeks before it's in a position that we can really use. So I do think that this window still gives us that time that we won't be so inundated. And that's a relative term, because I think we're going to be inundated regardless of what we do. So that's what the proposal is now.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask this before, but given the forthcoming publication, is it clear from the introductory 2 paragraphs, especially the first paragraph, says the proposed criteria and requirements below are intended to aid that effort, referring to a description of what we're doing. Is there any possibility that people will be confused about, we're not confused, but do we need to include a statement saying the order of the propositions and the criteria reflects no priority in and of itself? In other words, they're not in order of importance. Do you think anybody will be confused? Does anybody think anybody will be confused?
Certainly, more argument you can make in litigation. The order that's presented is the order of
Well,
priority.
they do that with dictionaries, don't they? And that's no good whatsoever.
Well, I think it's a legitimate issue. Why not spell it out? I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
there's any harm in spelling it out.
We could just add another sentence to that paragraph. So the proposed criteria are intended to aid that effort. No
Priorities.
no
to be assumed.
significance should be attached to the order in which they are presented. Does that work?
I think that would work well, and just clarify that point, because I think that could be a reasonable interpretation from someone getting on, assuming just because of the
Oh,
numerical,
no, you're right.
that there may be more weight added. Any other proposed changes or revisions? Great. Then one final, before we transition to the final topic on contiguity, I think it's also worth noting, and there's been discussion from day one on this as far as prioritization. I just wanted to clarify the possibilities and what's there. Under the statute, there's no requirement that there's a priority made. Now, certain states have done that and actually have embedded that either in their legislative code for their redistricting code. Now, there's obviously, pros and cons with that. One of the benefits is it takes away some of the guesswork if there's a conflict, because you can have already identified which one of those criteria or standards is going to take precedent over the others. Now, that still is an option for this commission. And as we get closer and gather public input, that may be something that if you see some of these rising to a higher degree or level of significance, or that you want to pay particular more attention to, that is certainly something that is available for this commission to define. And so I just wanted to clarify that issue.
Didn't we hear though from a couple of the experts that prioritizing is basically an invitation to a lawsuit?
I think here's my understanding of that. And I sat in that conference, and I think there was kind of two takeaways from that. The one takeaway and warning for litigation was an after the fact prioritization. And so I think the experts were very clear, and the litigation has shown that if a committee or commission creates a map and then later says, oh, based on this map, this is our priority, and then says this is our priority, that has caused some concern for the courts, because they're saying, look, this is results oriented. You didn't use that priority in the creation of the map. And so to me, that was the larger point, because a lot of state commissions do prioritize. There is also, though, that concern of if you do prioritize and do it too early or without the public input, and then you find maps that then are at odds with that prioritization. That was my understanding of the second kind of challenge, that even though you had set the priority early before creating the maps, some of the commissions would find themselves in trouble if they then liked a map that didn't necessarily
But the other is
fall
that you
down.
paint yourself into a box. You can't
Exactly,
draw the maps that you need to.
right.
We heard from, and I'm trying to remember who the speaker was, the speaker before you were on board, Matt, who had a lot of experience and was very strong on that point, the painting yourself in a box problem. He said, take a close look at your criteria and your priorities and have them in mind and be prepared to discuss them, but don't lock yourself in, especially don't lock yourself in early.
Yes, and I think that that's the approach the commission has taken. It's a wise approach. And just going forward, we'll have to see if that still makes sense, or from a practical standpoint, that some prioritization at some point may want to be explored, and we can cross that bridge when we get there on those issues. Anything else on this? Well, I guess subject to that addition, And because it's not an official adoption, I understand the commission's desire to be, once we clarify that there's no significance to this numbering, that we would then be in a position to make this available for public comment. Is that an accurate understanding of
Yes.
the commission? Okay. Great.
All right.
Rob?
No, it's not accurate. So I agree with what you're saying on prioritization, although I have to admit, if we don't have population deviation as our number one priority.
That's
Yeah.
a given, or it ought to
I would
be.
hope that, yeah. Second one, the pages 13 through 16, I object to.
13 to 16. Okay.
It's cute information, not necessarily consistent with some of the other studies that were sent out. And if that's the criteria that we're looking at, other than if this is simply information as an example to look at, to consider, if especially 14, 15, 16 are things that we are going to prioritize, then we have some real problems.
That's a great point, Commissioner Bishop, and I should clarify what the purpose of that, at least as we saw as we were drafting and soliciting the input. It was not to say, hey, this is what the commission's doing. It's more an informational and educational idea of here are some of the quantitative and other tests and measures that are used to help people understand and apply what that standard is that we do have to do.
Quantitative measures that other people use, but they're based on certain assumptions. And those assumptions may or may not be accurate. In fact, I think basically the assumption is inaccurate. But just so I realize that's simply additional stuff. It's fluff. It is not something that we consider as priorities. I'm okay.
But I think you raise a useful issue that if there, and there is information like that, but it's simply educational or informational, we ought to make sure that we clarify that the discussions are not meant to highlight.
You could do that with a header at the top that
Yeah.
just says, this is background information only and doesn't bind the
Yeah,
commission.
Well, it's obvious from the content that it doesn't mind the commission. It just talks about the ways in which
That's it.
the courts have dealt with the legal
Although it
issues.
says discussion, so I mean,
Right.
it's sort of like the page yourself in the box, like if you just, doesn't hurt to be clear that that information is background and doesn't bind the commission. Just a heading label even.
Commissioner Tony?
I was just noticing on page 14 on lopsided wins, is that in a closely divided state. Utah's not a closely divided state, I don't think. And so it talks about that being a test. So I don't know whether we end up with one district being lopsided, whether that's violating this because we don't have a closely divided state.
And I think that's a part of the purpose of these tests too, is to show what is available, to seek input of what commissions have found to be useful, what has been helpful in their determination. I think with the lopsided in particular, that can apply to a single district. And even though the state as a whole obviously is not kind of closely contested on certain areas, that there's certainly that this test would have value from what we've seen being applied to certain other districts. But certainly all this discussion and perhaps a clarifying point also included saying, look, this is just discussion purposes only. This is not what we're bound to. It's more trying to both educate ourselves, but also the public who wants to understand exactly, okay, well, what does this mean and what is available and what is there?
Just bold discussion and perhaps you say, these are dumb ideas. Then go on, you're fine.
On that,
But some of it's very useful information. It's not full of
That
dumb
was
ideas.
sarcasm. But they are dumb ideas.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought that part was not sarcastic.
Chair, I have another question. One thing that bothers me as I'm looking at this, trying to do it, is that we can look at things by political parties. We look at personalities. A good example of me was Olene Walker. She lived in Avenues in Salt Lake, heavily Democratic. She ran as a Republican and won because of her. She was so well liked. And so I think when we look at some of these things, Mitt Romney, for example, is a good example of him winning big and Donald Trump not winning so big because of the difference in the personalities, even probably more than the party. So I guess when we look back, I don't know how we're going to account for the fact you've got a special, well-liked personality running for a race that may make the voting different than it would be if normally people are just voting Republican or Democrat, or now the American Party or the other United Party that's floating around.
I think that's yet again just one of the nuances and a good point, Commissioner Hilliard, and what some of these mathematical, algorithms and software are designed to help you understand, especially in a majority minority. It's not, hey, you need someone of that same minority class, but someone who they would choose to vote for. And so it accounts, I think the law and the tests account for that recognition and factor that in where, look, it's really that the people have the choice to get who they want representing them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that they share that same, minority or identity because of those exact situations you've discussed. So as far as any clarifications on the discussion, I'm hearing we should say, look, this discussion purpose is only, obviously it's just the bracketed, the boxed part that is proposed to be the actual guiding criteria. Everything else is just adding some flavor with that. We've obviously heard a concern from Commissioner Bishop with pages 13 to 16. I don't know if those should be included or how the commission would like to handle that as far as the posting and circulation.
Well, I think there's some value in having it posted, but with the caveat that has been mentioned, that this is background information for discussion to help highlight these issues. And one of the things that you do mention in the text is that you say the commission is especially interested in obtaining comment on the following methods. And I think maybe even highlighting that phrasing is that we're looking for the public's input as we try and understand their preferences. But we also have heard from some of our experts that you can use and misuse these quantitative measures in all kinds of ways, and that we want to be careful in using them because if we look at it one way, if one group wins, we look at it using another one of these methods, another group wins, and that may not necessarily be helpful to us. But if we can get a consensus that one of these is useful, then I think that would be productive.
Certainly, and not just productive, but also I think essential or at least necessary with each of the accompanying letters where we have to explain on these criteria. With each map, we have to submit a letter, a detailed letter under the statute that says this complies with all of these standards and this is how. And that's where I think those types of quantitative measures can be especially useful for the commission is, well, it looks good. No, that's not going to be, I think, the intent or even the requirement for the commission, that if there are things available that the commission agrees are useful or that are generally accepted or certain things, and I obviously understand there's some nitpicks here and there, but there are things that commissions use every time. And there is software that is used to help them quantify, okay, how well does this honor this district? And so I see that as being an important aspect of the presentation to the legislature, is to let them show them, okay, this is what you asked us, the statute required us to look at. This is what we did, and this is how it measures the best that we can do given our situation. So moving on to the contiguity, this is just a very quick primer, 5 minutes total for this entire subject, but essentially it came into play in 1842, where the Congress first enacted the requirement for contiguity for congressional district. It was one of the first redistricting requirements. Now, interestingly, in 1929, on the Apportionment Act, the requirement expired. And in fact, the Apportionment Act didn't really include any additional requirements. And so from a federal law standpoint, the contiguity is not a federal requirement. However, all 50 states, obviously including Utah in our act, says, well, they need to be contiguous in nature. So even though the federal requirement no longer is there, we have a state law requirement in our act requiring us to look at that. So what does that mean? Well, in short, a contiguous district requires that all parts of the district be connected. Now, typically, this is measured by whether it's possible to travel to all parts of a district without ever leaving it. Now, we discussed last week some of those challenges and problems with water or with, our geography of Commissioner Hilliard would have to go around certain districts to get back into it. And that's something and a recognition that the courts and the states have all recognized. So it's not so draconian or solid that if you had to travel outside the district to get back in, or if that was the most reasonable way, as long as all points are touching, it seems that it's uniformly accepted and would not violate the idea of contiguous. I think Hawaii is obviously a great example. You'll have districts that encompasses multiple islands. And that kind of gets to Commissioner Bishop's question on the water issue in the next slide. And looking, nothing we could find in Utah, but looking across the United States as to what other states and commissions have done. In Minnesota, they say contiguity by water is sufficient if that water is not a serious obstacle to travel within the district. Once again, that's some flexibility, and you can decide, what that means. Is it travel by water or by boat or just even around the water? The Michigan Constitution actually has express language saying districts shall be geographically contiguous. Island areas are considered to be contiguous by land to the county in which they are a part. In other words, even though they're out in the water, an island, they just wrote it into their constitution that that's contiguous. And so what I think we saw through all of these was just a reasonable understanding of, look, you're going to have rivers, you're going to have lakes that may be carved up a little bit. As long as all the points touch, you're going to be fine. And I think this last South Carolina one I thought was a really good definition. Contiguity by water is acceptable to linked territory within a district, provided that there's a reasonable opportunity to access all parts of the district and the linkage is designed to meet other criteria stated herein. I think that kind of encapsulates the reasonableness idea. And from a practical standpoint, I don't foresee this being a huge obstacle, but we will certainly be mindful of it as we start reviewing the lines that are drawn, that if there's anything involving certain bodies of water in Utah or rivers or lakes that we make sure it doesn't run afoul of this. But I think the structure there, as how it's been interpreted, gives us really a reasonable approach that shouldn't pose a problem for the commission.
With the drought, we may not have water.
There you go. We've added a lot of contiguous land, have we not, in this last year, sadly. Well, that's it on contiguity, and that's it on my presentation for today. I will move forward in making those revisions that have been discussed, making those clarifications, circulate those tomorrow with the idea of getting those, once we have final approval, posted and work with Ally to do that. So are there any questions Commission has on this or anything else legal related? Excellent. Well, thanks again for your time. It's always an honor and pleasure.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate that. The next item we have on our discussion is insights from the National Conference of State Legislators. I know we had a chance to spend some time with most of the commission members there at the conference. I know we appreciated having staff there as well. I guess the question that I wanted to start off our discussion with is kind of, other than fear, what was your kind of key takeaway that you want to make sure we incorporate as a commission from what you heard or saw at the redistricting conference?
I have more just sort of an observation that the preparation that we heard from the experts early made what happened at the conference understandable. I'm not sure I would have understood as much if I hadn't had that background. So I appreciate what you and Gordon have done to pull together that background information as we got started.
Thank you.
Please, Commissioner.
Well, I came away, my takeaway was that I think we're really on task in terms of identifying the issues we have to deal with and identifying what we have to do to accomplish that. I did come away a little bit troubled about resources and time. I think it's a really daunting assignment that we have, and so, but I didn't, and I heard some really useful things from, especially in our session with other independent commissions, about tactics and strategies they were using. But I didn't hear a lot that we hadn't thought of, that we haven't identified and started to address. So that part was reassuring.
Thank you.
A couple of thoughts. One of them I found kind of humorous, and that was the phrase "dummy manders" that was introduced there, which is where a party or a redistricting commissioner group deliberately, gerrymanders, I say it right, and then it backfires on them when the wrong candidate wins. So I kind of found that a little bit humorous and interesting. Another one that relates to the maintaining the cores of districts. I for quite a while had seen that as a method of incumbent protection, and I did not like it. But there was another phrase that was introduced by someone, I don't recall the speaker, and they used the phrase continuity of representation, which puts the focus on the people within a particular district, not on the incumbent. And so that kind of softened me up a little bit. I'm still very cautious about doing anything to favor an incumbent. But I do like the phrase continuity of representation within a given community or part of the state. And I think that's something we should kind of watch for as we move forward. As Commissioner Durham just mentioned, I think we are on the right track. I didn't either hear very much that we hadn't already heard. So I know we got an overwhelming task ahead, and it's gonna be a few things that catch us off guard, and I have no doubt about that. But I think largely we're on the right track, and we will be as prepared as we can be when the data is released.
Commissioner Hale?
Well, I think we had discussed this a little bit, perhaps last week, and maybe as we sat at the conference. Something for me was, as we talked about, not using race as a predominant factor, but then ensuring that people have the ability to elect a candidate of their choice, and to really be aware of the I think what the term was, racially polarized voting, and so that just presented to me. It sounds like a very tricky line to walk, and so I came away confused about that. So that was just one thing, and I did think it was really interesting, the discussions about legislative prerogative, and I thought that was very interesting and really I guess was very encouraging to me of our efforts here to be open and transparent.
I just add what's already been said, that I came away from the conference understanding this is going to be a very difficult job. Just time, staff, everything involved in it. And quite frankly, one of the real problems you have, if we had the time and we had trained staff to do this, and we want to do a totally new map, there's no way it'll ever go through the House or Senate, because they have to finally approve it. And the interesting thing about the legislature, we all hate the legislature, but we generally like our representative. And so, you can beat up the legislature all you want, but come back to your own elected official. So I think we need to just do the best we can, but that really concerns me, that if we get too far down the road trying to do all kind of new nuances and new things, we're going to find we're destroying things together at the very end.
Gordon, were there things that you saw that that either you wanted to make sure that we reflect on or that caused you nightmares?
No, I want to first commend the commission because I think you guys have really put in the time, or you already started out really smart to know as much as you do about this stuff. So I'm impressed that way. No, I just wanted to hear if you felt like after going there that we were heading in the right direction, that we were giving you information and useful exercises to get us engaged this way. I had a couple things I wanted you just to be aware of, and then we're going to jump into some more potent topics. But the legislature is going to approve the final maps. And so we're watching very closely what their criteria is, because once you approve it with your criteria, if it doesn't meet their criteria, it can get tossed out of hand. So we need to make sure that we meet those criteria. And I want to really analyze what those things mean. And so one of the things that we heard from like Colorado, by their constitution, they're not allowed to split more than 7 counties. And so we're looking back at the 2010 census and seeing exactly how many counties were split, how many cities were split. And so as we do each of our maps, I want to just compare what was done in the past, just so we know if we're spiking off the chart in some direction, and just seeing, how these continuity. Now they came up, with some very sophisticated software that does a lot more than I think I'm talking about with our interns here, but we'll have a few of them approach some of the things that they've discovered that I think will be very helpful as you have these discussions. But anyway, no, you've answered my questions. That was great. So I've been writing notes, but you guys like me.
And I would concur with the observations of my colleagues that one, I think we are headed in a good direction. I think together with Commissioner Durham and many of the rest of you, I do get worry some about our resource adequacy, especially to do some of the more sophisticated analytical kind of reviews, especially towards the end, where we're going to be very crunched for time as it is. And so I want us to continue to be thinking about that, see if we can figure out creative ways as we have figured out creative ways to do our mapping and other things. I think that is one of the things that I found that we're somewhat different than a lot of these other places, because we're trying to do some things creatively to one, stretch our resources, but two, also to engage with the public in a way that is different than we've ever done before, because we're trying to answer questions that we haven't been asked before, and that's part of our challenge under the statute. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to join us and to think about the issues that were presented. Matt, was there anything else that you wanted to raise from the NCSL conversation in your time there?
I guess just 2 points. The first point, it was great to see participation from our commission as I talked with others. I think the fact that we were there asking questions, taking notes, and just the quality and caliber of people, it gave me some comfort. Maybe I should have put that one second, because my second one was, I think, shared by many of you, of the daunting task as we listened to these presentations where they would say, okay, as soon as the data comes in, do this amount of hours with your legal to make sure it's all correct. And then the next presentation is this and this. And really, it just was another reminder of the daunting task before us, where we have additional criteria to look at. We are tasked with trying to enhance the public's voice and apply what the public tells us and put that and actually utilize that in maps, and do so, at a budget that is just a lot smaller than these other commissions. And so that is the challenge. I would say the one kind of common or concern that keeps coming up for me is the use of professional map making line drawers by other commissions. That is something that is uniformly used by other commissions. somebody who actually has done that before, knows the lines, and ideally also understands kind of the legal aspects of it as well. And that's just something where we've tried to be creative with our GIS experts, and they've been amazing to do what they can do. And but that was one thing that just makes me a little concerned, and even talking to people from the state of like, well, how are you actually going to draw the maps? It seems to be something that keeps coming around. So those are my two takeaways.
Any other comments from the members of the commission? Again, thank you for participating, and thank you for your perspective, and we appreciate and value that. And as Gordon noted, they're taking notes and going to try and help answer as best we can the concerns that have been raised. Please, Commissioner Hilliard.
I'd like to add something else. I really appreciate Gordon's work. I think he's been amazing to walk in here cold turkey, in effect, and take over and do as well as you've done. I've personally been very, very pleased with your effort and what you've done.
Thank you, and may the record show there are several thumbs up and nodding going on. Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to the next item on our agenda. Another mapping kind of discussion. Gordon.
All right, so last week we had a little exercise of mapping, and we're going to do another one this week. But I wanted to, before we started, to look at the end product of what we're going to produce. So we're all kind of charging down this path, our vision. And again, a lot of this is based upon our resources and where we're at. And so what I've done is we've had each of our interns now are responsible to produce the 4 maps you're supposed to do. So they're taking the 2010 data and they're spending hours just making maps, because I want to know the pitfalls, the issues, so that when they're working and doing this, they know what it's about. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to kind of run through, I didn't actually have, but Cassidy put together a little presentation that I want you guys to see on the numbers. We had that discussion earlier today, and I want you to see, it was really eye-opening. This was a discussion that took place in the legislators' districting committee. So if you want to hand out the papers, you can.
Sure.
Go to the next slide.
Thank you, Gordon. So just as kind of a summary, the legislature's committee is also really interested on what kind of standards they're going to be adopting. So they're having very similar conversations. Something to note that they talked about was the threshold of difference between the districts, which we've talked a lot about. We know that we have to be under 10%, right? That's what federally is expected of us. The legislature has decided to adopt that they want to stay under 5%. Within this discussion, there were several representatives and senators that were concerned about this from rural districts. And they were afraid that with this number, if we were to follow exactly and try and get each district like within 20 or 30 people, suddenly we're carving out parts of bigger cities, and then someone from those cities can run that doesn't really represent what their rural area is about, which I know Commissioner Hilliard, you had mentioned last meeting. So just that, so you're aware, those senators and representatives from rural districts were kind of hoping to adopt something closer to 7 or 8% difference. However, that did not pass. So they're sticking to the 5. So it's possible that you as a commission can choose, as long as you're under 10%, to do a greater percentage than 5, but that's up to you, right? So some examples where this might be helpful is I have Sevier County up here. So in 2010, this is the district line. So the county itself extends down this way and then comes up and around. And for some reason, this section of the county is not in the district with the rest of the county. And I didn't do extra research as to why. Maybe this part of Sevier County just doesn't identify with the rest of the county, but it seems strange to me that it wasn't together. So we were curious, we're like,
Let me just
okay.
stop you.
Yeah.
The chair in 2010 was Ralph Okerlund, who lives there. I say that because he's very honest. I'm sure he didn't, that brings a highlight. You can have a county that maybe one part of it may be totally different than the rest of the county. Us looking at the map say what they do that. And if you actually knew that part of the county may have their commerce, everything going some different direction. So I say that in a way that I would be shocked if Ralph Okerlund, he ended up with 11 counties, if I remember correctly. If he took that out for some personal reason, because that's just not the type of person he is. Other legislators, I would not say that. Ralph Okerlund, I would.
And I like that you mentioned that because as we're gathering communities of interest, this is why it's important to us, right? Because we just don't know. So for me, being an outsider who like wasn't paying attention to redistricting in 2010 because I was young, to me, it was like, oh, this is strange that we don't have this whole county here. So when we ended up moving the rest of this county into this district, I think we moved like 200 people, right? So suddenly this district has a little bit higher of a percentage than it did before, but that's because it's inclusive of the county. This was an example I wanted to show because the percentage change from not having the 200 people to having it was still rather low. I think this one was like 1% above the ideal district split. So that's just something I wanted to show you. If you move to the next slide, this also happens with cities as well. So if you go in our software, you can actually look up the boundaries of different cities. And you'll notice this part of Enoch is not in the district that has the rest of Enoch as a city in it. Now, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe these people in this block, these 200, like in 50 people, identify more with this district, which contains Cedar City, but maybe not. So it's kind of this balance of like, okay, if we're within like 20 people within each district, are we still maintaining communities? And like, I can't say for sure if this block identifies more with Enoch or more with Cedar City, but it's just something to consider. Another thing you'll note on that document is the committee did talk about what they want for their mapping program. The legislature does not have their mapping program up yet. They're gonna put it up after we get the census data and they get the census data. Right now we have communities of interest. So that's where you can draw the boxes around it. They are planning on putting the locations of the representatives and senators on there. So that's something just to note. I know they're putting it as accurate as the census block because, you know, some representatives and senators have had problems in the past with people not very nice to them. So just so you know, they will be having them on their map. So far, it seems like as a commission, you've decided like not to do that. I think that that's something we can highlight as we talk to people in outreach, just to show like, hey, we are independent of the legislature. It kind of gives us credibility. So that was another thing to note in that meeting. So those were just a few things I thought you'd be interested to know.
What I thought was particularly interested is that from math standpoint, you may think if we get it closer to one person, we've somehow made it a better map. But there probably will be times, and I'm not trying to forecast, where you might think, yeah, I can get it to that one person, but I carve off these little blocks over here. In reality, it may make the map worse. It doesn't do as good. So while we have to do the 10% and with the 1% on congressional, there's no variation on those. The commission's going to get to decide if you bring it down to that 1% kind of thing. That's what I want you to think about. It's not a yes or no today, but just options that as we're drawing maps, I'm making them go to 1% and they have to carve up neighborhoods. And these don't matter though, because these are just practice runs. So you're not practice.
And just to note, so the legislature in these numbers that Cassidy has here, for the congressional districts, it's 0.0001%. That's a total of 8 people, just for your reference. So they're talking about a deviation of 8 people as their target. Please.
I'll add one other thing too, as you're looking at it. Where you live is important for the Senate and the House. And so sometimes when you adjust the boundaries around, they're because people want that area in their district because you have to live there. Congress, you don't have to. One of the big debates they had in 2010 when they did the pizza rather than the donut hole was a concern some of us had that 4 people out of Salt Lake could run and win all 4 of these districts because you didn't have to live in the district itself. And so that's kind of a concern, I think. But again, the House or Senate, where your lines are drawn become very, very important because you have to live in those lines to run for the office.
Right. And we're going to be cognizant of those details. Again, we want maps that the legislature is going to adopt. And so if their criteria is that 5% versus a 6 or 8 or 7 or 10%, maybe that's what we have to do to meet their criteria. So, or maybe one of our other maps, we show that it's preferable and we're only at 7%, but we'll do a 5% to, we're going to get to that discussion in just a minute. But I'm just saying there's a variety of ways to address it. So it's not today addressed, but I want us to be ready at the end of the day, have done it right so that it's good.
And by the end of the day, you don't mean the end of today.
No. November
Commissioner
1st.
Thorne.
So with the total population's been released, at least the numbers,
Yes.
the census tract. In order to meet the different levels of equality between the districts, can you give us the numbers of how much the deviation is maximum for the Senate and for the House? Rex just did it for the congressional seats of 8. What are the numbers for the other
I
7?
can't give that off the top of my head. When you say, can I give it to you? Yes, right now, no.
That's fine.
He needs his
But
calculator.
as we start to practice drawing maps, it would be nice to
We'll give
get used to.
we'll give you numbers
Translate.
and to show you what your range is.
And I can give you some feel for that. The 1% in the congressional districts would be about 4,000 people above or below. The 10% in the Senate districts would be about 5,600 people above or below. And so that's a much larger gap than the one that is being targeted. So, but if we're at half that, the numbers are, obviously slightly different. It does make a big difference. So.
Okay, that's enough said on that topic. I just wanted you to think about that.
That's one caveat you have to say.
I'll do it.
So Christine, when we got our map down to 8 people in that district, we were spot on. I want you to know we made it.
That's true. Thank you for pointing that out.
Forgotten
Did you
about
hear
the
that?
third district.
Okay, I believe there are some people in this room that can do it right, so I'm gonna stand corrected.
We're not all highly competitive people.
No, it's just we were worried about coming in.
All right, I appreciate the competitiveness. That was excellent. So now then I wanted to talk about and Chairman Facer and Matt touched on this, and this has to do with the resources and moving forward. So we anticipate getting the data August 16th. If it comes earlier, great. If it comes later, sad, but I believe it won't. Then getting the data prepared. I've heard everything between 1 week or 2 weeks, but it may happen sooner or quicker. Whenever it happens, we're going to be calling an all hands on deck kind of in a situation because we're going to want to start the mapping process. And so what I've done is they've started mapping, and I'm going to have later on some of them tell you their experience. But again, doing the maps, and they're putting thought into it, and they can tell you their criteria and how they're going through it. But it could take 10 hours to get a map and then 10 more hours to refine it. And then that's only with them arguing amongst themselves. Now, there's a couple interns that have split personalities, so those discussions get pretty intense, but you are going to be discussing it. And so it may be a little more livelier conversation. It could take a little more time. And so I wanted to give you an idea that 12 maps and all the time and putting that together could be over 100 hours. And we're talking a month. And that's not going through the analysis that Matt was talking about, trying to come back. And we're through the whole process. I have some interns that are going to just QC everybody's work. They won't say it's bad, but they're going to suggest some things that you can consider each time when you come back to the maps. The things we have talked about and other things that we're considering. We're starting to, that conference gave me a real clear idea that we have to be. It's great to think about people, and that's what I want you to think about, but there's going to be a quantitative side of us that's going to really try to analyze. Now, it's not going to be as rich and full as some of the things we saw there, but we're going to do what we can do. And so that's the discussion, is that during that week of September, that first week, we start having meetings through the state. if the data isn't ready till, say, the 24th of August, I envision you guys needing 3 weeks to do mapping, minimum. That's if we give you lots of vitamins and lots of Diet Coke to get this thing done. And so then we're going to be going to these meetings throughout the state. And one of the questions I have is, if we find that's the case, do we want to push those meetings and shorten them up so that we have maps to take to people as opposed to talk to them about the mapping we're doing? So that's not a decision today, but those are things to think about. The public sometimes appreciates seeing what you're being asked to look at, as opposed to, trust me, this is what you're going to be looking at. Give me your comments. And there's 12 maps, so we may want to have most, if not all the maps prepared for those hearings. So I want you to think about that end product where we're coming. And so, so tonight you're going to see interns who are going to be able to just draw maps, lickety split for you. They're going to be able to do stuff, and they're going to be quiet if they see you do something they wouldn't do. But there is a value in having that additional map drawing resource to help us get through this major crunch, because it's going to be an exciting moment and we're all going to revel in it, but it's going to be, I'm envisioning very exciting. You can use the word exciting, has a lot of definitions. So I wanted you just to think about that as we gear up for September. Make sure all your vacations are out of the way, your days off, so everybody's ready to go. There was no questions in there, just comments. If you had questions, you can ask, I guess. I'm just trying to convey what's in my mind, what I've talked to our staff about, what I've talked to the chairman about, our city attorney, just so everybody gets that this is going to be, it'd be great to have some resources to really help us focus at that. But we're going to move with what we have. We have good trained people. I'm shocked at how quickly even the Utah State guys were able to pick up the software surprisingly fast. So, sorry,
Used to counting cows. It's pretty easy.
okay. We're gonna actually be nice to all of them. But the second thing I wanted to just talk about was I want you to think about the 3 maps. So we're doing 4 maps. So generally, my mind is you always do just the number 1 map, and once you've got number 1, that's the one you go with. But we're going to do 3 additional maps, or 2 additional maps. And so those additional maps should be number 1 as well. We should have 3 number 1s. We should have 3 excellent maps that my preference would be for the commission to vote all 12 unanimously to be recommended to the legislature, and they pick them. I think that would be the ideal solution.
Should they be prioritized?
I don't know, and I think that could be individual, and you can decide that as a commission. But I'd like to see that move forward in that fashion. That's just a dream. I work for cities, and if you can get all unanimous votes, it's so exciting. So that's just a dream of mine, but I'm not going to push it on you guys. But the issue would be that second map is that maybe where we're going through, we hit an impasse, and that then the second map starts to take form and shape. Or is it a situation where we make the most ideal map, but we recognize that the state legislature they want 8-person separation from congressional districts, and so we just do a mega refinement and that embodies that first map, but really allows it to be moved forward by the legislature. So there's a couple different philosophies we can do, and not any of them are preferable or not preferable. They're your decisions. So I want you to be thinking about, we're going to bring you about 4 or 5 options on how to do that, so our staff could kind of think about that and help us create these maps a little bit concurrently, as opposed to linearly where we're just doing one, then the next. We need to be kind of efficient in how we produce these maps. All right. Yes, questions?
Please. Turn this on. I don't know where I heard it, but it's in my mind that one approach would be to take the commissioners and form 3 teams. And each team then would do a congressional district, a House district, a Senate district, and a school district. And so when those 3 teams each had their done, would have the 12. we could each bring our map in and defend it in front of the group, but the group may make suggestions to make it a better map based on what we're doing. But that way we end up with 3 maps, not with everybody sitting trying to do one map altogether. You have something that each have done separately. But so there's no political
That'd be
involved.
great.
I'd be with Commissioner Durham or Hale or Baker and we'd divide up that way. That was kind of a thought I had in my mind of getting it done.
In full disclosure, I believe that was Commissioner Baker that suggested that. So.
And I think that's as wonderful as any. So I don't have,
Please.
Yeah, that really has the advantage of efficiency and gets some base work done and then brings the whole group into the refinement stage. The only thing I worry about is whether, I'm a little concerned that 2 people on an initial team is too few. That we'd be better off with 3 at that stage, but that's logistics, so. But
all
I-
7 on the same team.
But I agree. That would slow us down, I think, and so maybe we should experiment. I mean, in
we're
our,
gonna be doing that tonight.
And
so-
in some ways, that's what the exercise last week was a little bit of experimentation with
Right.
this. And we'll do a little more tonight.
No, to that, I think that wouldn't hurt, but I do think you do need the, if you're break into groups, do part of the mapping and then come together, talk as a full body, not really talking about maps, but all your issues, then break apart. You get the advantage of the commission, but yet you keep the efficiency of just maybe doing that. So there's probably a myriad of ways to make it function well. And you might need a break from the person you're with for after a couple hours. So there's probably a lot of advantages. I'm not saying you by all, anybody.
I'll be by myself.
Hooking anybody, so it's.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have one question. There was discussion about the information being released on August 16th, and that it can take quite a while to go through that information and to analyze that information and recognizing that we really have skilled people on our team. Do you think we will be ready on the 17th to actually start drawing maps with numbers?
There's a lot of
Especially
theories.
receiving the data on the 17th.
Esri, maybe Baker could comment on what we should.
Assuming the data is released on August 16th, it will be available to the whole wide world. Esri's going to pick up that, and so will a lot of other companies. It will probably take them just a matter of hours to import the data, but they will go through a QC period of probably several days to make sure it's all bitten up properly. My guess is, assuming August 16th is the release date, it would be available to us maybe the 20th, 21st, 22nd, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
But they are going to grind it through a quality control process.
That's what I've heard too. There's been some states where things blew up because they were trying to reapportion the prison and it took 2 more weeks longer for data to come out. But if we have pretty clean data, which I think our data is fairly, I have no reason to believe our data is not clean. It may only be a matter of less than a week to be ready to start mapping.
No, but you're right. The 17th is probably pie in the sky.
I put this was done 2 months ago. And so none of it's really, so what I'm suggesting is, once we get closer to the date, after this, I'm gonna have Joey here explain a little bit about his process. And I want you to start thinking about time commitment. What's the best time? Should we come in for a 4-hour block several times a week and do things, or how do we facilitate this so you feel like you're able to do this and have a life? Well, no, not a life, but it works well. We'll have a number of people and we'll schedule around you so that you can accomplish the task. And that's what the goal is going to be. So just think it through. Once that, and we don't know the exact date, Commissioner Baker will be the first one to know that date, and he'll text me. But once he texts me, then we're, like I said, it's all hands on deck. We're going to need to really group up and figure out maybe before that, we have our teams ready, we'll have our people on standby, we'll have rooms reserved, and we're ready to start making maps. So. Again, just commentary, not really anything meaningful. So, and I just want you to think about the schedule as we start working down. We may want to slide it a little bit more if we need some of the time in September to do the map drawing. So, do you want to have maps done before we have our first hearings? You don't have to decide that today, but that's an answer I definitely would love to hear. Go ahead.
You know, just, it's always good to have something for people to respond to. So I think having something, I mean,
Yeah,
some kind of map.
And one possibility, and we could probably do it, quicker than some of the other things, would be to have the old boundaries with the new numbers in them, so that we can see what has to,
What has to
what has to
change.
shift, yeah. So we may be able to do something like that sooner, so we can still have a map for them to react to, but it may not be,
But show the numbers that have to
yeah,
plus or minus in to keep this district.
yeah.
Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the mapping exercise.
So let's go ahead and take a brief break. So we'll come back together at 5:25.
Then we'll make teams. We got to break, do a different set of teams than we did last time.
All right, so we're back on the agenda. We're on item 7, on the discussion, well, the presentation, I guess, and the mapping exercise.
So we're going to now break up into groups. Let me just describe what we plan to do, and this may help you decide who you want to have for your partner.
You think I'm gonna let him choose again?
Okay, good call, Chair. You're a genius, absolute genius.
Sat next to you on purpose.
Again, we're going to use 2010 data. And this time, we're going to just start a map. So you're going to be given county outline, city, but we wanted to add one level of complexity. So yeah, just bring up that map. Okay, so what we did is this is the 2010 just different minorities that are counted in the census, and we just had dots. And so what we did is we had Autumn just create random, what we call communities of interest. They're not true, but we just wanted to add a little more complexity as you just start the process. And so you will just, how do you want to start a map? Some people like to start right where they live, and that's where you know, and you can start out from that point, and that's probably smart. And just get 2 or 3 districts done, and we'll come back in about 35 minutes and just talk about the experience of getting started. And so you'll have more robust data this time. So just break up into teams. We'll have 2 teams go upstairs and 1 remain here.
So we'll have Commissioner Hilliard, Commissioner Thorne, and I will stay here. Commissioner Baker and Commissioner Durham will go to one of the rooms, and then Commissioner Hale and Commissioner Bishop will go to the other room.
Commissioner Bishop wanted the butterfly pointers.
So yeah, we have laser pointers now, and one of the fantastic features is you can have little patterns on them if you want. And there's a little black knob towards the front end if you want to change it to a smiley face or a butterfly.
So this is the mouse, and then you can change it to a, well, let's see what the other ones were. There's a butterfly. And there's.
You turn it on.
Okay, so you push the lever up 1 slot. No, okay, you gotta go, you want to have two clicks. Go back 1.
Yeah,
There you go.
if you go 2 clicks, you get the blue light. That's for discovering blood in case we have a murder and we need to do an investigation.
Red. I got.
And then if you turn this little knob, the black knob, it will give you the, see, there's your crime should be. Yeah, and that way you can just, there's a smiley face. So we can dim the lights a little bit, but we thought this would be easier than standing up at the map. I think Commissioner Baker suggested something like that.
Or a long stick to point.
We could have a stick to point. Okay, your GIS people awake, and there it is. That's it. You don't need to change it anymore. You found it. That's why the draft will tell who's going to be comment.
So I understand.
Okay.
Jack, you're giving us.
But we're too far.
We're just showing some rough communities. Just think about it. You may need to cut things up.
What kind of districts are we doing?
The air.
Don't show too
Are
much.
we doing congressional districts or?
I'm gonna let you pick. You can start with.
What's the stand on the?
We're doing
I just,
congressional.
my back has gone out of her. It's good for me to watch. Supposed to walk.
I saw your face happy, is what they say. Jeff.
So if you go to your room, you'll have a
Oh,
blank.
yeah.
And if you need something, tell them what you want on the screen. And they'll keep notes if you don't have it. So
Who else is
so if you're saying.
It's just the 2 of us. I don't know.
You can take them, and then I can take you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Need to give them 2 on the.
All right.
So
Oh, yeah, yes.
We'll do it after.
Yeah.
Dr. Facer, because I'm
Yeah,
screen sharing here and the
you might
plugins
have
are
to take
here,
it
I have to stay here since I'm helping you.
I
So
might work them out
if I can have you guys do it on this screen if you could, that, because I can't see this back
We can
here.
do that.
Thanks.
I'm gonna see if we can turn off these lights right here.
Yes, I can.
No, this is on the tape, and we're gonna be videoing this the whole time.
So you can stay seated if you want.
All they're gonna see is the map and hear your voice.
But if you can disguise your voice, make it sound like Commissioner Thorne, though. You got your starter work now.
It doesn't show up on the
It
screen.
doesn't show up on the screen.
Yep, I can see it up there. The whole star doesn't, but at least the
The
lead.
star, but once you put it on the screen, it's not there.
Yeah. I guess just having it on the plain laser.
What's mine supposed to be?
No, I think you're just on the plain laser, Lyle.
Okay, so I'm just gonna show you guys around here a little bit. So the areas that look like this right here are gonna be the minority groups. So we have NHI stands for Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, or just Islander in general, and then American Indian, Asian, and then Black. So those are the minority groups and they're shown in these areas. And if you want me to set each minority group to a specific color, I can. As we zoom in, last time I know you guys had a hard time when you added areas and they didn't do anything. So any areas that are in red are areas that have nobody.
Okay.
So that way, when you're trying to district, those areas have no one. And as we zoom in, they increase and stuff like that. So we can really get started wherever you guys feel comfortable with. We're doing the 4 districts right here. And each one containing about 691,000 people.
Can you show us the current lines and the population in each district? So we know we have to move people from the first to the second.
Yeah, so if you look down here, we haven't done any districts yet. So everybody's unassigned, but if you see right here, when I put people in a district, their population will show up.
What he wants to do is, can you show the 20?
Can you show the old boundaries?
Yes, I can.
Now, we can't populate it with the deviations. We didn't have that. We have a total number, but we don't have a total number in a district.
See, last time I got up and stood right next to the screen so I could.
So these are the current districts, so we can switch between the two.
I tell you, I saw a tweet by somebody who said, don't put me in the 4th district. I don't want to nasty campaigns again.
Enough with bad politics.
So you could draw that, and then do you guys have a specific area you want to start in? A lot of, when I did my maps, I started in Logan because that's where I'm from, but.
Straight, you can see it. As soon as you start going over too far.
Okay, so why don't you move down, and I'll move down, and while if you move this way, then our
Pointers.
pointers will work.
I still can't see my pointer.
Look at that. Oh, yeah, now you got the butterfly line.
I can even turn the lights off if that would be easier.
I can't see it on the map.
And what's the number that we have?
So our target is 691,000.
That's what they said last time.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
dividing the total population by 4.
Yeah, so this is the current map. So you can see 3 of the districts have 690,971 and 1 district has 690,972. So when we're drawing, it'll look the same right here. So we don't have any districts started yet. But when you do, you'll see the population pop up to the corresponding color of the district.
So let's, if it's okay with you guys, how about we start up north? And I think this little place here could be in a congressional district. Maybe
Which place, sorry?
Just take that whole. corner.
just all of Cache County and Rich County,
Okay,
the top.
Box Elder. Those 3 counties will give you about, I'm just gonna guess now. Just under 200,000.
That's where we're looking at right now.
What's the population in those three counties?
179,000.
So we need another 500,000.
So the question is, you go into Ogden, which you obviously, if you added Weber County to it, then what do you have?
That's what,
About 404,000.
So we're still,
Still need 285,000.
now. Summit County won't give you very much unless you put Park City. And I'll tell you, Summit County is really divided between Park City on the west and the other county, the other
Rural part.
yeah, school district. There's a North Summit and a South Summit School District. And a Park City, 3 school districts, like a small little county, and they don't like each other.
would it be easier for you guys to see the maps like with the streets and the city names and stuff? Or do you like this one with the populations in each area?
Oh, that's what that is?
Population.
Oh.
Yeah, so the numbers right here are the populations within that
Okay.
zone. So as you zoom in, you can get a better view of it.
I think that's too close. So if we add right here, just take that whole swath.
Puts us at 494.
Is that Ogden City? But not Weber County?
Is it possible to get the city boundaries on here that we can easily see?
Yes. So if you go right here, let me make them a little bit more transparent here. Okay, so these are the city boundaries. It doesn't have the name on it. Let me look here. Let me. Okay, so these are the city boundaries and you can kind of see the names in them right here. So that's Layton, Syracuse.
Add Layton and Syracuse to that.
Was chewed out by somebody who was a city official in Davis County and said, but Davis County all in one district.
Okay, so you want to add all of Layton City?
Yeah.
Okay, that's in the yellow right there. So we'll sign that.
Unincorporated island.
And then let's clean it up with different areas.
Add Syracuse.
Syracuse, I think, sometime away.
Whatever this one is, just to the left of it. I'm gonna have to go to industrial strength lasers.
Or green ones.
I'm looking up counties here. Okay, so that's Syracuse and you want to add that as well?
Yeah, when I was teaching, I switched to only using green because it's easier to see.
Okay.
So that's where that is, and we'll add this section in the middle. And then clean up the edges a little bit.
568.
Oh, they're split.
Short still.
Oh, perfect timing for me.
Add Kaysville then next.
Kaysville?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll add in Kaysville.
To sit someplace.
What's the size of Weber County population versus Davis County?
So let me see here.
Okay, that's fine.
No,
No,
you
you're
can't
fine,
find it.
you're
I
fine.
can find it.
I just ended up working a lot later than I expected tonight.
I don't know if it has the exact population on here. Sure, there's an easier way to look it up, but I'm still learning as we go.
Should we add all of this just to keep it the same district?
So this is Weber in the yellow. And if you want to see,
Davis is 359,000. And is 255.
About 100,000 more.
Can you add this part in there?
Which part, sorry?
The lake,
Just south of Lake,
Yeah, just the lake, or do you want to add all of, this is Davis County right here.
the lake and what's west of the lake?
Sure.
So west of the lake is also Davis County, or is that Tooele County?
This is where Davis ends, and so Tooele is,
I say we pick up the rest of that.
Tooele?
Well, I was thinking the rest of Davis County, because we've already got part of Davis County, right?
yep, so you want to see how that would look with Davis?
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll add Davis into this. And that puts us about 19,000 over.
Over our deviation.
Yes,
Pick out Morgan.
We're rich.
Rich is only at
do you want
2,000,
me to try to take
So we
out
got
Morgan?
2,000 people?
which is.
Okay.
You want me to take out Morgan and see what that does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the whole county though.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. Okay, that still puts us at like 11,000 over.
Like you've got to cut off a little piece of,
So yeah, we're gonna have to split somebody here.
Take somebody on the south end of Davis County.
And then these are the minority lines. I can temporarily get rid of them if they're in your way.
cut out North Salt Lake. How big is that?
So let me clean up this one section down here too. That puts you at about 4,800 under.
So we could pick Morgan County back.
About 4,000 over.
We were 4,000 under, now we're 4,000 over.
If you divide Morgan County along the highway line,
Along I-84?
yeah,
Sure.
There's, everything's on this west, south of it. You may get,
Divide it, you're looking at under 80 or under 803. But you can zoom into Morgan and add, because right now Morgan's split up, as you can
take
see.
the rest of Morgan City then.
At Morgan City.
Oh, well, I don't know. It's, oh, that one's mine?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know you said it. Okay, thank you.
That puts you 2,500 over.
800 under 2,500.
So without Morgan, you are 800 under. With Morgan, you're 2,500 over.
What about along the railroad line?
Along the what, I'm sorry?
Instead of the whole city, yeah.
Along the,
Oh, along the interstate, maybe.
yeah,
But the usage where we were, but I'm still trying to get under. So
you're 670 under. That is within the 1%. That is within the 1% deviation.
with congressional districts.
We've
they're
got a
trying to get
little
down to
spot that's not captured, right?
Right here.
Oh yeah, that's just an on-ramp. I don't think that'll change population at all yet.
Where can we pick up 670 people?
Do you want to keep looking at Morgan, or do you want to look down in the North Salt Lake area? We can see if adding certain blocks like this little one.
Add that block, see what that does. How about that little square that's
Oh, good.
just,
That one, right? No, up.
There. Right, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
172.
This one right here, do you just want to go along this
Yeah.
road? Okay,
Look up 10 people.
Okay, then you have a little
What about,
island.
well, where his cursor is right now?
right here.
What about right here?
Let me clean this up just a little bit. Yeah, it looked like there was
You've
anything
got
there.
nobody in that.
Okay.
So let's clean that up right there, 75.
There's a little corner right here along whatever that is.
Yeah, so it looks like that's a whole census block, so it all has to go together.
Okay, well, it's still, we're 75 under.
71.
Want to clean up right here or up here?
Yeah, up to that one.
57.
Add this block.
Again, I just think that's gonna have too many people, but go ahead.
Yep, looks like you're right.
What do we do with, now what do we do with North Salt Lake? Is it divided?
Let me show you the city limits here.
Salt Lake is a little bit divided.
So there are, for the most part, it's gonna not be in this district,
Right here.
but the blocks that we've added are, so do you want to try to add these ones and take out this one?
Yeah, let's do that.
What happens? Put you 64 over.
So if you drop in
Well, I was gonna say, this one right,
right here,
or right here,
Take that out.
yeah. Now we're 64 over. Were we 64 under? Now we're 64 over?
We're 64
we're
over.
64 over.
Yeah, but when we had, oh, we're 64 over still. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like that was just an industrial area.
Let's take Grass Creek out of Buck Cellar. I'm kidding you.
What line is this? Is this the city limits?
Yes, that's the city limits, and these aren't as accurate as this
What
one's.
about this strip right?
So the yellow lines are the accurate city limits.
Okay, so the yellow lines.
You want to try to take this out since this isn't in North Salt Lake? Okay. Bingo.
Oh, hey, look at that.
0.
Okay, so do you want to lock in District 1 or do you want to change anything? You can change it later, but just make,
Let's lock it in.
okay, so we'll lock it in for now.
How
So-
big is the population of North Salt Lake that's not included in District 1? What's the population of that?
Of North Salt Lake, that's not, we don't have any of North Salt Lake that has, because this area did not have any population. In fact, do you want to take that out really quick, just so it's, you can
Yeah,
say
let's
all
take
of North
that
Salt
one
Lake
out.
is in one district? Because I didn't believe there was any population there. Yeah, so now all of North Salt Lake, none of North Salt Lake is in this district.
What's the population of that area now?
Of the District 1,
No. Of the North Salt Lake area that's not in District 1.
what do you see?
Usually,
Because the question gets to be, what do you do with them?
Oh,
I'm
is this
in
it?
the Salt Lake County.
yeah, I think so.
So this, no, that's, yeah, this isn't this.
Contiguous.
I don't know if I'll be able to.
So I know there's a way to look at the population. I'm not 100% sure what it is.
It's the 16,322, I think.
Where are you seeing that?
Where do you see it?
Oh, yeah, total right there. So, yep, that's gonna be your,
16,000 people in North Salt.
Actually.
okay, so we'll lock District 1 in with perfect.
Actually, I had worked out before they adopted it.
Okay, and I'll let you zoom out to kind of get a better look at it.
The yellow bar.
Oh, sorry, the yellow is just North
Oh,
Salt
that's
Lake.
Still North Salt Lake.
That's just.
That's what's interesting. When they put plus or minus, that would mean a 10% range. It's like.
You wanna start, which side of Salt Lake do you want to start on?
Do Twilla and then Salt Lake.
You know what I mean? It means something different.
Start in Tooele? Okay. So I'll bring all of.
Plus or minus 2.5. That, yeah, but what they've written is plus or minus 5. Based on their comments. They're thinking that's
What District 1
Okay,
does.
so just putting Salt Lake County in with Tooele, we're already over by almost 400,000.
control them. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got
You're gonna
to
have no
take
vote.
Salt Lake County out.
Utah State, Weaver State, you're gonna have review.
Okay. So right now, we just have Tooele County.
That's Salt Lake County, that's gonna put it way
At
over.
North, at North Salt Lake.
Yeah, when we added Salt Lake County, it was 100 or a million. and-
Yeah, 400,000 over with Salt Lake County.
Take Salt Lake out and add North Salt Lake.
Salt Lake, okay,
It's 10%, right?
just that region right there.
So like this is actually
You're gonna have to connect it, through the.
6 or is it?
So as of now, they're connected.
But I think it's interpreted. So it's doing that.
Still 600, yeah. $1,000.
So you take the unincorporated part of Salt Lake County,
If you drew the line with
right
I-15,
here.
Drew it along the I-15.
take west of I-15.
Okay.
So
It's okay. Yes, we can.
let me just clean it up a little bit here. Okay, so this is all west of I-15 down to the I-8,
We're gonna have to keep going south.
okay?
I mean, I guess we could go east as well.
Do you want to keep going south along the I-15 or do you want to cross over east?
Cross over at 20, I-84 that goes up Harley's Canyon.
Oh, so,
Oh, do you mean the I-80? I think I-84 is all the way up here.
yeah, so the I-80,
Yeah, 80, I got 80.
So this whole area,
yeah.
okay?
Thank you so much.
That's 407, huh?
So what about adding Rose Park and Glendale?
The other one being west of I-15.
Oh, yeah, there,
Yeah.
yeah, we already got them.
Okay, so that's along the I-80.
If you add West Valley.
You just want to keep going along this highway, the 201?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's south?
Let me tell you, the problems you're gonna have, you got Merle out in one corner, you got the Moab area in another corner, you got St. George in another.
So should we go ahead and come out and pick up Vernal on this one?
Or, we can do that when we do that. I think if you took District 2 and went all the way to St. George. To the west side of the
I think
state.
that makes some sense, yeah.
District 2 down to St. George?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you just want to do it by county,
Yeah.
all the west counties? Okay, and then we'll add Washington County and see what that does. Okay, so we're still under with Washington County.
That's a-
Of course, the figures in 2020 are vastly different.
What's west of Provo?
Like,
Is that just the lake?
Uh,
something in place
Well-
called Spanish Fort.
Basically, we do have Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs that are they're right out this area. Right out in this area here.
Right here?
And so let's pick up all of this area
West of Utah
west
Lake.
of Utah Lake.
Okay,
Yeah,
you want Utah Lake included in that, or?
yeah, yeah.
Why don't we take the avenues, Seven Salt Lake, put avenues in it?
If you go all the way to I-15, what's that?
So if you take Center Street east or north
Where?
Avenue area, so you go in Salt Lake City itself, Center Street. And, oh, you've got that already
Yeah,
in
we've
District
got
Two.
the
It's already-
yeah.
Avenues is already in it, okay.
Everything north of the I-80 is,
And what about west of I-15, going down to Utah Lake?
on this region?
Keep going down. Go over to I-15.
Okay. Do you want to add Orem and Provo?
Not
No.
yet.
No,
Let's go back up to north,
to
like the Eagle Mountain.
At this region?
Springs area.
Okay.
Did we take all the way down to St. George?
Yes, we
Yes,
did.
all of Washington County is included here.
How about 180?
They were 186 off. 186,000.
Let's go east of St. George into Kane County and
go all the way
Cedar
down to
City.
the bottom. Yeah,
At this county?
at Iron and
It
Kane.
might be there, 4 or 5 counties down there.
still 174 off.
Yeah,
Edward.
yeah, add that county as well. San Pete, or not San Pete, but
San Juan.
How in the world are we gonna get 2 more districts out of that? We've got 1 and 2 done.
Want to add these 2 counties?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
go on.
well, now we're only 86 off. Now we're down to 65.
With this county under 32.
Now it's a little fine tuning. What's at the southern end of
Yeah, let's pick
Utah
up that.
County?
Spanish
Yeah, Spanish Park,
Park.
my favorite city.
Home, yep.
Okay, where,
No laughing, Alan.
You know what bothers me? Oh, it's like, you gotta do 2 other districts.
yeah, but with this whole region, it'll be fairly easy.
If you went south of Highway 6,
Okay,
In the second district.
you like those kind of campaigns, don't you?
not a large census block, so it'll take me just a second to get it all in.
That Highway 6 now?
Yeah, so we're doing south of Highway 6 now. I'll just, Highway 6 isn't considered a large census block, so it's gonna take me just a second to add them.
We've got 12, too many, 12,000? Or it's
Oh, we're
12,000?
still under.
Still under.
We're not adding any people. That must just be the national forest.
And giving somebody a big district to travel. Probably bigger than many of the senators' seats.
Yeah,
Certainly Rhode Island,
Yeah.
but probably not as big as Alaska's.
what's this island over here? Yeah.
I just gotta clean it up a little bit here.
And we finally picked up some people.
Got to go take Mapleton, put Mapleton in this district.
Mapleton, where's that?
Just north of Highway 6.
South of Provo. Springville and
To keep the other part,
Yeah,
Want me to keep going along Highway 6 here?
yeah, let's capture
Okay.
all of this area because there's virtually nobody here except for a small population right here.
so you haven't bought any Spanish Fork yet, have you?
Nope,
Or Payson?
nope.
So I'll get everything here first.
Santa Quinn.
Or, yeah, let's pick up Santa Quinn, Woodland Hills.
I think Santa Quinn will put it over 12,000.
Can you get the areas just south of there?
Nobody lives.
Let me just get up.
Is this a county line? What is that?
This is a minority line right here.
So can you fill in this?
Yeah, that's what I'll do right now.
Now, where is Payson? Where is Spanish Fork? Where's Springville?
Spanish Fork up to the top. Santa Quinn
So
at
do
the
you want me to do Santa Quinn city limits first?
Santa Quinn, Payson, Spanish
bottom. Do
Fork.
Santa Quinn and what's south of there.
So we'll assign Santa Quinn in.
We're still 4,500
I'll
under.
take the area south of there.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we'll have to add this area in so they're contiguous, okay?
I had a good friend who grew up in Hurricane, which is down by St. George. He said he played football with the Hurricane team, and to play, it was easier to go to California and play a football team than to go to Moab.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had to drive all the way up to Provo and then down.
Yeah.
So we ought to make sure that side of the state is in a district that ties into Provo, rather
Okay.
than having somebody travel to St. George and then they can't get over the other side.
Okay, let me just really quick clean up the areas that are a little wonky here. Okay,
4,000, so
want to add in this little sliver?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Like part of Elk Ridge or part of,
Yeah, let's get Elk Ridge
or Pace,
or Woodland Hills.
this corner.
Well, either Elk Ridge or Woodland Hills, I think are gonna be reasonably modest-sized
Yeah.
communities.
Okay.
That's Elk Ridge.
All right, go ahead and add it.
Okay.
Okay, we're still 1,600.
Take the areas here.
Okay. Let me connect these ones.
Can you show us the city boundaries of Payson?
So we haven't touched Payson.
Well, we picked up a little bit of Payson
Yeah.
right here.
Things like this look really odd.
Yeah.
That's where Judge Thorne lives.
So do you want me to remove the parts of Payson?
Yeah, let's remove the parts of Payson. And
Here,
yeah, capture this unincorporated area out here.
Okay.
Not a lot of people, but yeah.
And let me connect those.
Five hundred too many.
No, you're still under 500.
400 short.
Yeah, you're under a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Let me stop you right here. We really ought to go down in Graham County and San Juan County.
So you want us to undo the Grand County and
Yeah.
San Juan County?
I think they need to tie into somebody going from Provo down there, than somebody from St. George over there. So you take
That
the
makes sense.
Colorado River as the dividing line,
Okay,
probably not very many people there.
Where's the Colorado River?
it's that big squiggly line.
And east of it, you want not in this district.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, so that's what that did to the population.
Wow,
57,000
that
people.
was a bit about more than I thought.
Yeah,
Want to take this one out too?
No, I think you leave,
well, yeah, let's take that above Vernal there.
that's Uinta County. Yeah,
So we're
take
gonna have
that.
to add Spanish Fork.
And then one thing to
Yeah.
keep in mind is this is an Indian reservation right here. So you'd be splitting the Indian reservation in
I
half.
don't want to do that.
But we can run that line if needed.
So you could add back in Vernal and the county above it.
What's that green line there?
Well, the problem is we've got a contiguity issue because we've got to get from Orem or from Provo over to San Juan County.
Where do you?
Yeah.
Well,
Nine-
because we've
nine-
undone San Juan County. And to get there, they're gonna have to come down Highway 6. So,
Why don't we take that green area right above where
Yeah.
right there, right there.
Take that out.
Take that
Put
out.
that in the blue.
yeah,
The one below that, take it out. Put it-
this
Take
one,
Iron County out.
No, it's not.
Carbon,
okay.
this is Carbon,
Carbon, I
right?
mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then add in Spanish Fork.
I'd take the areas of Utah County on the west. That would be
Well, we already
Eagle
picked up,
Mountain.
yeah, we already picked up Eagle Mountain, I think, right?
So do we want to pick up Payson and Spanish Fork and see what that does?
Let's
Yeah.
pick up, yeah, let's go ahead and pick up Basin and Spanish Fork.
The issue is, can you drive that road without going through Spanish Fork?
No. Oh. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you want me to add Spanish Fork or leave it?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because we're 79,000 short, and that's only gonna get us about 30,000 by adding in Spanish Fork.
But we added everything else there.
We can add the
Well, we've
areas
got to
around
pick
it.
up,
That unincorporated area around it.
yeah, we've got to pick up Payson and Salem.
Salem Pond.
Too much there.
They spy on us already.
Are we within one person?
Did we even finish all the districts? Nope.
No.
32,000 off.
Okay.
Now let's pick up yeah, Springville.
Springville?
And Mapleton.
Chair, we told everybody this is about the time we're coming back.
Okay,
So we're gonna,
we're just about to solve all the world's
You're tired.
problems, and you're gonna stop us?
it happens 4 times a year. That's why the world has all its problems. That bureaucrat comes in at that very moment.
Okay, so with Springville, that's, you're looking at,
Yes, we won't, we're not gonna put this in America.
Did you hear the bad news about the pointers?
Yes, I did.
Mine doesn't work.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing.
They don't work. They show up on the wall really well, but they don't show up on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, that one works.
Well, it shows up if you're pointing straight.
add
If you
Mapleton.
go
Oh,
any
okay.
bit of an angle,
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Sorry.
But even then, it's pretty
I would have missed
slim.
it as soon as I got here.
No,
It works super clean.
Straight, but you can't, in the room we're in, you can't put it straight.
Now you're
Yeah,
about
the chairs are
4,000
to the
over
side.
without this
Yeah.
area.
To add that in, because it's gotta be contiguous.
Oh, I see.
So now we need 5,000 people. So
Yeah,
if
I
you
just
take-
need plasticware.
It's right there on the corner of this.
Go for 4,000.
You gotta lose 5,
Can you go north from there and see what's?
So yes, we don't.
Well, north from there is Provo.
Quite
Okay.
I think we need to give, because I think the
They're
District
cool,
3 is
yeah.
gonna be Provo, Utah. County
Well, we'll give
area.
it to the commission, so now you have to buy a cat.
And then 4 is gonna be the.
Oh, it's just
Salt Lake
like-
County, Houston, or-
Judge it. I don't
That's how
think-
you're gonna have
I don't think I need to care.
Well,
Yeah, the dog won't, but the cat.
Dog won't, but cats will.
I was said.
Dogs think you know, so it's like- Yes.
You get one, and Utah County, now we now start adjusting.
Loved having a
But
dog.
that's the
I
case.
had
Yeah.
Dogs for a
That
number of years.
drives.
because-
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, the wonderful thing about having a dog is that, number one, every day, that's
Or you can say.
that dog has ever had.
Because you're there.
And number two, it's because you're there. And when you come home, doesn't matter what happened yesterday. You are number one.
Then you have a
That they're very
Gigantic
active, they want to support the pack and
That's right.
foster the
Yeah.
strength.
or you can just order the state, northeast corner.
We do want
Northwest
to make
corner.
sure it's noticed that we got to 0 on our first.
Family and I just recently moved to Provo.
I always said, the first one's easy. After the second. you get-
We
I wish I
decided
could
to
stay
start
in
in
Oregon.
the southern
We were
part of the
looking
state.
for.
Okay.
Getting to 0 on your first one.
So
was not
many
easy.
No, yes.
Yeah, so we want you to think about those
There were a
numbers.
couple that we saw that we
Really
wanted,
want to try
but
your
then
congressional districts for
we weren't
one.
ready to sell.
That is
at the
a-
time that They were.
It's a lot harder effort
We
than
weren't
you
ready
think
to
it is.
sell.
Oh, yeah.
Just let it be a
Sometime
couple
in
thousand.
July,
Yeah, that with the.
You're going to the average.
I know, what happened to Jeff's chair? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. So, yes.
One of the companies we worked on was based.
So they're not. No, I don't, again, I still like.
Because the other thing that, system proposes to everybody, so I didn't.
Yeah.
So I have to.
Yes.
I already know your name, but. For suggesting.
It was a great idea. We just got to figure out the execution of the lasers.
There's more expensive lasers and maybe we're gonna do a little. Say that again. And see if we can do something. We gotta do some things.
So did we want to talk about the mapping exercise? Obviously, the lasers were an issue. We had another discussion where the screens
Screen
in the
size,
smaller conference room seemed a bit too small.
way too small now. Ted's younger and he could see more than I could, but to get far enough away so you don't have to do this, you can't see.
Yeah.
That's where I am.
Okay. Other comments from folks? And I do want to say, at least from our experience, I really appreciated the acumen that our interns
How fast.
are picking this up.
Yes.
They're really
Yes.
doing a terrific job.
So can you teach me that fast?
Maybe starting at a different pace.
It's possible. I think one of the things we suck is we tried to start from scratch,
Uh-huh.
which is a really stupid idea.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think
really hard, isn't it?
After we did the first 4 districts, we kept within the county boundary zone.
Uh-huh.
That was a plus. We realized why they're going across county boundaries now. We really need to start with the core districts we have first to give us an idea of where we're over, where we're under, and where you can make some kind of a shift. That becomes, starting from scratch, it's not a
Okay.
dumb idea.
It'll never pass the legislature. If you start from
Do you
scratch,
agree with that?
have
Ted,
everything brand new.
do you agree with
Well,
that?
yeah, well, I had Brigham with Harrisville, but other than that.
There's pros and cons. I think any approach we take is gonna have pros and cons.
Sure.
We just need to launch and go.
Gordon.
That's really good feedback. So I think we all learned to start from scratch will make our job a lot harder and more difficult. So I think it's good to experiment on commissioners. And so we did that and we're going to try some new things on you next week. So just be prepared.
I think if we start from scratch, it kind of prolongs the process, but if we start with existing districts, we could be accused of bias. So
Said we should try to keep ones intact.
Well, yeah, one of our, I mean, it's balancing the core districts issue, right? I mean, yeah, it's, how high a priority do we want that to be? And I think there is a reasonable argument to be made on,
Right.
starting there, but also there's concerns. I mean, if people think those core districts were already, problematic, then we're just, continuing that, problematic status.
Yeah, that's a significant issue in light of the history surrounding this commission.
Yeah.
So,
We're going to also try to give you some stories in each of the counties of what we're hearing from people. And so I think that will be a big benefit.
Educational.
So anyway, that's fantastic. So I wanted to hear what you kind of said. We learned a lot. We're going to have hot wash tomorrow at 9 o'clock with just our staff, and we're going to talk about you. And then we're going to plan for you, and then we'll see you again next week. But that's all I want to talk about that. Cassidy has been working with Julianne on some social media stuff. So I want her to kind of just talk to you briefly about that.
Okay, so something we've really been wanting to do is to gather the public's input in a variety of ways and to get their attention so they know that redistricting is going on. And one way we can do that is social media. And something that's nice about social media is we can see how many people are like clicking on things, how they're interacting with things, and all sorts of analytics that are nice. Another thing we want to do is be a little bit more, as Gordon puts it, cheeky on our social media. We want people to be excited about redistricting and involved. So something I suggested is we make rejected maps. And this is the map I chose to show you tonight because I went to BYU as an undergrad.
This is the first rejected map.
Yeah, so you don't even have to vote down this one.
Reject.
It doesn't follow the
Actually,
guidelines.
with a stamp that says rejected across the top,
Yeah,
that
a
might actually
stamp,
make it even more fun, yeah.
You want me to add that? I can add that. So
There's some other schools that are going to get the same treatment. So just be careful what you're doing here.
this is just the first one I wanted to show. So we thought this would be a fun way to get people involved. People tend to be really passionate about their alma maters. So this is something we're planning on tweeting out. We also are working on memes about redistricting. So if you go to my next slide, this is a meme I created the other day. And I feel like this is especially relevant as you've practiced mapping. You're like, oh, I think I know some things about this community, but maybe I don't. So we're trying to get the public's interest through this. But we're also using redistricting as an opportunity to educate the public. So we talked with Love Communications the other day, and we've been looking at other independent commissions. And the other independent commissions, especially Michigan, has put out videos kind of telling people what is redistricting, right? Sometimes people need a reminder. We only do it every 10 years. And sometimes it's easy to forget what that means if you haven't gone over government stuff since like, high school. So we talked with them. They're gonna create some videos that talks about, okay, what's the process? How is it different this year? What things do you need to know? And very much like frequently asked questions or points of information that can help people understand what redistricting is. So as Gordon mentioned earlier, we would love if you guys would follow our Twitter accounts, our Instagram, and our Facebook if you have it. Something we also are starting that I've been working on this meeting is we are live tweeting updates of our meeting. So as we move to an agenda item, that tweet gets pushed out with a link to our YouTube. So people, if they're on Twitter and they see that, they can go ahead and click and follow easily to our meeting. So that's some updates there. We also have a calendar. So we're really working on being consistent with our media presence. Instead of just tweeting like out of the blue, we have our meetings. We're making sure that we're tweeting that on like Monday and then today as well. So that way people are aware of them. So nothing is a surprise. So that's something that the social media team has been working on.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I really want to get everything on my webpage here that you've given us. I haven't been able to do that yet, but I want to get that on so I have that name. I would like the link sent there so that I can use that to access and use that email address for everything related with the conference or with this commission.
So when we send out tweets, I guess the question is, could we get, since some of us may not follow Twitter as actively as others, if we could send out a link to the commissioner's emails, that would help us be able to make sure we're seeing the fascinating memes.
You wouldn't want to miss any.
Commissioner Hilliard wants to retweet all of those. I want to make sure he has that ability.
I've been burned that way. I don't tweet anymore. I follow it.
Yeah, we can go ahead and send a digest of our social media if that would be helpful. And we'll also have posts and content that we're pushing out, like in terms of information. So not just stuff we're just tweeting from the account, but like posts that we've paid to have move up so people can see that. And that will probably do like informational stuff. I don't think we'll be like boosting memes anytime soon. It'll be things that are more relevant to information regarding redistricting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We're going to have, Bo, I want you to talk a little bit about the outreach to some of the cities. Next slide. Next slide.
So schedule an event first.
What? Oh, schedule, Cassell's first. Sorry, Bo.
That's all right. We got an issue from Commissioner Hilliard.
I noticed an email or a tweet the other day, and it had a picture of the legislative group. And the person underneath says, they're wasting our time and our money. The Republicans are just gonna gerrymander. Why are they wasting our time? And then I followed my comments or where I get my laughs for the day. But there was one comment there that said, and I don't think the independent commission will do any good because they sold out to the legislature when they did the amendment. And I know when I talked to Jeff.
We didn't do the amendment.
Well, when Better Boundaries did that, the legislature, I think Jeff had the impression that they'd sold out and did everything wrong. I wasn't part of it, so I can't tell you exact details, but I heard it after, and I think some of the things changed was that the initiative bill would have had legislative staff staffing both committees. And so they came back and said, no, we'll give you $1 million. You can hire your own staff, your own people. So they separated it that way. There was probably other things too. I think it may be well in some way in outreach, we can explain to people what that concession was, that it wasn't giving up. I know there's some things the legislature wanted they didn't get. There's something Better Boundary wanted they didn't get. But I think it was a pretty good compromise. They came together and did it. And I don't think the legislature just crammed it down the throat of Better Boundaries. I think they had a pretty good discussion. So if there's a perception out there that when the legislature got with better boundaries, they threw better boundaries under the bus and changed everything. And so there's nothing to do. Because I certainly don't think it did it to us, but I mean, there's a perception out there. Maybe that's the only tweet I've ever seen about it, but I think it may be well. And somebody who knows, somebody who was there and could tell us, pinpoint exactly the differences that they made. I know the staff was one, the salary or the appropriation grant was another one. There's some other issues that they changed that made it, I think, a better bill. That is true.
So we have Katie here, who's now the new executive director as of a week from now, I think, or tomorrow. And so we'll sit down with them and we'll try to, and again, I think the compromise, I wasn't part of it, but I'm supportive of what Better Boundaries did. They are the ones that took initiative. They support, so I do. And the commission has that. And we'll make sure that we try to give an education element on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. I worry a little bit that the commission is an independent commission. We were not in existence when those negotiations were going on. We weren't in existence when the initiative was passed. I think there's some value in making it very clear that, fine, if you've got beefs, talk to the legislators and the lobbyists and the Better Boundaries people about the compromise and look at the actual legislation, but don't blame the commission.
Yeah.
We came into being quite recently and we're dealing with what we got. And I don't know if that's worth pursuing, but it strikes me as fair.
I think we'll try to make sure that they know where you guys are in the process so that it's not back there. But I also think it's good to show a history of the origin of this. So I think we'll take your comments to heart, but the idea again is education. That's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Christelle?
All right, so Sion will be passing around calendars. Because our website is up and we have our social media platforms running, we've been able to get all our events and commission meetings, tabling events and public hearings on a calendar on the website. And this is also a physical copy that you all can look at and be able to keep up with what's coming up. So besides the calendar and events, we have been going to a lot of different cities like Spanish Fork, Farmington, Logan, West Jordan, tabling and talking to the public and helping them understand how to navigate our website, understand how they can go and submit their comments, and just know what's going on and how to submit their maps. And we've been getting a lot of great public responses. Another outreach effort that we've been doing is we've reached out to over 150 organizations here in the state of Utah. And we are asking these organizations to help us with outreach by either posting our content on their newsletters, social media platform, reaching out to their email list, or just individuals that they interact with day to day to get them to go onto our website and do the mapping. So we've reached out to political groups, universities, ethnic and cultural groups, city chambers. And right now we're currently working on reaching out to religious organizations as well as school board members across the state. We do have upcoming meetings with the NAACP, Voter Rise, Women's Leadership Institute, and BYU College Republicans. We're just hoping we can get as many groups as possible to really help us push the message and get people to be aware of what's going on and how they can participate and be involved in this process. And we do have a list on this calendar right here. We do have a list of organizations that we've already reached out and contacted. If you all have any other organizations in mind that we can reach out to that can help us with outreach, please feel free to let me know or let Gordon know, and we can definitely reach out to them.
You can tell she's looking for things to do, so we need those other.
Yeah.
People.
Have we reached out to all the county commissions, city councils? And
Yeah, so we're gonna
Tribal
talk about
groups.
cities and counties in a minute, but
Yeah.
yes.
Just a quick thought, most of the cities run their own utilities. And if you got a flyer into the utility bills, it would go to virtually every citizen in just about every city.
That's one of the things we're asking for,
Are
yes.
you, very good.
That's good to know. We'll take note of that.
Oh, you're on, I won't make you sit down this time, so you can stand up.
Okay, all right, I'll come up. So yeah, so we've been talking to cities and counties as well. We're trying to get to as many cities as we can. I've kind of been going down the list of population, so at least we can get as many people as we can. But we've talked to, Joe, if you go to, I think the next slide just shows the list of who. We've talked to a few more cities on this, but these are the cities that we've been able to sit down with and have the conversation with. We've been talking to city managers or city recorders or a couple mayors and councils. One or two cities just ended up immediately saying, here's our outreach person, talk to them. So all of these cities have agreed to help us do outreach. They're going to put us in their newsletters. They're going to put us on their social media. But they're also going to help us in two other ways that all these cities are going to, once we get a little closer, they're going to have their councils and mayors sit down and kind of come up with an official statement from the city so that we can have not just communities of interest and public comment from individuals, but also the cities. So, Magna's going to say, hey, this is what we'd like for Magna, and Moab's going to say, this is what we'd like for Moab, and et cetera, for as many cities as we can get. So that should be some valuable kind of official feeling comment from the cities. And then we've also been asking the cities, besides just outreach and comment, if they can help us with the mapping portion a little bit. So we have our redistricting tool that we've been working with all the commissioners with. And that tool is going to be available for the public as well. If there are some motivated people out there that want to draw us a whole, if they want to do the districting for the whole state, they're more than welcome to. And we have the cities with their GIS departments agreeing to help kind of facilitate that. So if somebody in Provo wants to do districting for the whole state, Provo will have a GIS person potentially available to help that person. They can go to City Hall and say, hey, I want to do redistricting. Can you please help me with the technical details of that? So the cities have been ranging from on board enough to help us to very on board and would talk to us every day if we would let them. So there's a lot of interest from the cities. And so that's going to be very helpful to help just consolidate and facilitate really getting this information from the people of the cities and helping us get it into a place where we can digest it and use it more easily by getting comments from their council and their mayor and all these people that are, in the city a little more and can kind of help us know what the hearsay is. And did people complain in 2017 about their districts, or have people always been happy with them? They can give us a lot more context. So, yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, but the plans are to get as many cities as we can. Yes, please.
Reached out to the tribal groups.
We've been doing some of that. Christelle's been working on that as well.
Yes, we actually have, we are going to, we reached out to the Division of Indian Affairs and we are going to a summit in September.
So reached out to the Indian Affairs, and there's a summit of all tribal leaders in September. We're going to that.
Okay, but you're probably not going to get the officials there. And UDIA is a state thing, and so.
They thought we'll find out. You may be right.
Well, we have an expert on tribal issues.
We
So
will talk to you. We do want to talk to, we reached out, they said, come here, and we said, okay. So let's make sure we're getting to the right people.
We've been working on it, but if you want us to change and improve our process, we'd like to as well.
The obvious place is you send a letter or set up a meeting with the tribal councils and say, here's what we're doing.
We'll do that.
Doable.
And it's a little more problematic with with Navajo, because we only have a portion of the Navajo reservation. But you may want to reach out to the group that represents all the chapters, the precincts in the Utah portion of the reservation.
Okay, well, we'll look into it. Thank you.
We thought we were on, now we're learning, we got to do a little more research.
And you have a little island the tribe is actually in Colorado, but there's an island just south of Blanding.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about talking to cities? It's pretty, I would say it's a more straightforward part of our work. We email, we talk to them, they put stuff in their newsletter for us.
Thank you. We're also reaching out to counties as well. So again, these are the ones we've just had the sit down discussions with. There's others that we have commented through with emails and with, yes.
Oh, and I'm just assuming too, and I believe you told us that you talked to the league, the cities and towns too, so there will be a presentation there hopefully at the next meeting. And
So with the league, they have their conference September 29th to October 1st. And we do have a booth there, so we will have interns there to talk to everybody. Plus, we've registered for a presentation slot. And we're waiting to hear back on the presentation slot. So those are two aspects of the league we're doing. And we have our site for the state fair. So. We have next. Joey made a map. I want him to talk to you about
I
it.
did, but I didn't save it.
It
so
was
I
the,
didn't-
this was the map that was going to end all district maps. He was doing all 75. Go ahead, tell him what you're.
Yeah, so I've spent the past probably like 12 to 13 hours over the past little bit, just really familiarizing myself with the software. And I did the state House of Representatives districts, which is by far the hardest one. There's 75 of them. And so it's hard because with the congressional districts and even the Senate, you can keep a lot of cities together. But even a city like where I'm from, like Logan, is too big to have its own district. And so cities have to get split. And I just kind of wanted to talk about some of the things I've learned that I'm sure you guys will realize. One of the biggest things, especially when you get down to the Salt Lake area, I'm originally from St. George and I currently live in Logan right now. So I'm very familiar with those two areas. So that's kind of where I started. But as I worked my way into the metropolitan area, the maps have to come together. And so when you start, it's really easy to say, oh yeah, you put this city here. But at one point, the maps have to come together. And it's really hard to get that in an area. And I wasn't even really working with demographics such as minorities and stuff like that. So I think I got probably 30 out of the 75 districts done. And that took me about 11 hours. And that really wasn't considering any of the demographics or minorities or anything like that. That was just considering county lines and cities and stuff like that. And I didn't really even do the Provo, Ogden, Salt Lake area, which is by far the hardest area to do because you have counties like San Juan and Carbon, which are really easy to just include the whole county in one district. But as soon as you.
Let's exclude those cities from the legislature.
Yes. So I guess what I'm trying to say is one thing that I've learned is that when I'm making maps is to think about that ahead of time. Because as I work my way down on the west side towards Tooele, it's really easy for me to just say, oh, this is going to work out perfect. But once they have to come together in that Salt Lake area, it gets really hard, especially once you put in those minorities and specific demographics that you're trying to include together. So have that in the back of your head when you're starting to draw the maps. And today was a lot better than the first time. I think we were a lot more efficient and we're kind of getting the hang of it. But just keep everything in the back of your head because at one point the maps do have to come together to form all 75 districts or all 4 districts at one point.
Mr. Bishop?
Joy,
Yes.
you weren't looking at existing districts, were you?
I was not. Bo was working on a map that was, and I wasn't doing a map for submission or anything. I was just making a map to kind of.
Did you start in rural areas? You start at one side of the state and go down?
So,
or did you start within the urban areas and then go out?
So I started in northern Utah and went down for 2 reasons. One, that's how the maps currently are. And I have some, I intern with the state legislature. So I have some familiarization with how the maps currently are. And also I'm from northern Utah. So that's the area that I'm really familiar with right now. And so I kind of started up there and worked my way down. And I found that to be pretty efficient. Again, it kind of got hard as soon as you got to Ogden. Because I kind of went west towards Tooele down to St. George. And then worked on St. George and then we're out kind of like a big circle like that, if that makes sense.
So what you have found out is what the legislature's found out every year it does a redistricting. And that is there will be a buckle somewhere. That some place has to have a buckle. And just for the sake of having people happy, being nice, You don't want the buckle to be in Salt Lake. Those are the, you'll hear the most from them. Which means the buckle usually is in Twilla. It was Amber County one year. I think right now the buckle is San Pete.
Yeah, somewhere down there.
Yeah,
that
so
area.
there is, and I think that's intuitive on when we actually do the legislative districts, which I think is another reason why we should start with the existing districts, so seeing what they are right now. But we have to recognize eventually there's going to be a buckle. Eventually, you're going to have to take a county and divide it up unusually, and they're going to complain about it. And I think the only thing legislatures try to do is every 10 years, they put the buckle in a different place. Yeah. But it's going to be found.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I were to, and I will have to go back now that I've accidentally deleted my map. I was going to show it to you guys. But I think in hindsight now, it was really easy for me to get to Tooele and just go west in all of those less populous counties. But then as soon as I worked my way back up to the Salt Lake Ogden area, it was exactly that. I had to put the buckle right in the middle of Salt Lake. And so I think it may seem natural to just say, oh, we'll include this county and this county because there's only 4,000 people in it. But just exactly what Commissioner Bishop said, just make sure to have that in the back of your mind, because at one point the maps do have to come together, and you kind of have to think of that in the beginning rather than after, when you're done with the maps.
So, thank you. And I thought that was good after tonight's experience, but I also wanted to suggest to you, when we're talking to the cities, several of them, I told them that you're going to be split just by the sheer numbers. We ought to hear where you think that split ought to be. So I think these cities need to come to us with ideas of splitting, so we don't split too arbitrarily when we hit the buckle, but we have some basis of rationale. This is what I think we need to do.
So the question that goes to them is, we know you don't want to be split, but if you have to split, where is the one or the two places that would be,
That's part of our
make the most
discussion.
sense?
Yeah, so we want to give you that. So once you decide where your buckle is, we can give you some guidance we got from the city, and you get to decide how you use it. So we're not saying that nobody gets split. We're just saying we want to do it in a way that works well. Oh, that's kind of the discussion for tonight. So is there any questions or thoughts that maybe again, take vitamins, live healthy, exercise, because I'm telling you, once the data shows up, even though we start with existing districts, I think there's many long hours to get to a finished map.
And the last thing we have on our agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody here that would like to make a public comment tonight? We had anybody online?
So far, we have had no emails and nobody.
Okay.
So.
Just out of curiosity, how many people are online watching?
Let me look.
Right now, only 11.
And they're probably paid.
Did you say probably family members?
Jerry Howe, the legislature is.
All right. So if there's, are any other items that anybody would like to bring before the commission?
We still have approval of the minutes, I think.
Yeah,
We were gonna
but
postpone that.
I was going to postpone it till next meeting,
That's
so that we had a chance to review them, because there was a revision.
Good, yeah. I know, I just read it in the small print.
I just have a comment. I know the legislators meeting in Logan is going to be, I think, the 9th of September. So I've got it written in my book. And I think it would be well for us to go to, if there's a meeting near you, at least just go listen to what goes on.
And we'll then make sure that at our next meeting, we pass out the list of where the legislature is meeting and
Yeah.
the dates.
That would help.
We'll do that. We want you to have more meetings.
Yeah, we don't think we'll have enough meetings, so we'll make sure we add a few.
There's per diem for that, right?
It's only gonna be one meeting. It's just gonna be 3 months long.
Yeah. All right, if there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, meeting is adjourned. I'll see you next Tuesday.
We try to get the minutes, because we're doing some pretty rapid fire, there may be a little bit of a lag when it goes out too, just because there's so
I'm gonna
much.
talk to ACS tomorrow.
Yeah, the kids.
And then we'll talk.
I'd rather you keep them than the interns.